You've probably already tried to stop thinking about that person, tried to convince yourself that what you feel no longer makes sense, that too much time has passed, that logic says one thing and your heart insists on saying another. And yet, that person is still there, not as an obsession, not necessarily as longing, but as a presence that your inner self recognizes in a way you've never been able to properly explain to anyone. What if the problem wasn't you? What if what Scorpio calls not being able to forget was, in fact, the most honest way to realize when something hasn't been completed yet? Because there's a difference between people who pass through and people who leave a lasting impression. And Scorpio, unlike any other sign, can sense that difference. They can identify when a connection belongs to a cycle that hasn't yet ended, not through reason, but through something deeper than that. In this video, I'm going to show you how this mechanism works from the inside, what creates this record that won't go away, why the cut doesn't erase it, and what Scorpio needs to understand about destiny, not as something that will happen, but as something you've already recognized. There's something that happens to Scorpio the moment they meet certain people. It's not love at first sight. That concept is too shallow for what I'm describing. It's more like recognition, as if something inside you says, this person belongs to a cycle that hasn't ended yet, and you don't even know why. There's no way to explain it logically, but the recognition is there, quiet, precise, unwavering, and it doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It simply happens, and after that, the world becomes a little different than it was before. Most people go through life without ever feeling this. Scorpio feels it, and then has to live with the weight of not knowing what to do with that feeling. Because nobody teaches you how to deal with a recognition that doesn't obey reason. There's no manual, there's no protocol. You feel it, and then you're alone with what you felt, trying to fit it into a narrative that makes sense to the people around you, who will tell you to move on, not to get stuck in the past, to value those who are present. And Scorpio listens. Scorpio understands the logic, but deep down, he knows that none of this advice comes close to what's really happening. So Scorpio does what Scorpio knows how to do, observes, is silent, processes in layers that no one sees, and waits for time to resolve what willpower cannot. Sometimes time resolves it, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't resolve it, Scorpio begins to wonder if the problem is him, if there's something broken in this capacity to feel that is so specific, so uniquely his, so different from what anyone else seems to experience. And this question remains suspended, without a clear answer. But is it really a problem? It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. It's not a book about relationships. It's a book about what moves Scorpio from within, about why certain people, certain situations, certain recognitions are imprinted in a way that others aren't. It doesn't treat this as emotional weakness. It treats it as a specific form of perception of the sign, a capacity for deep reading that few know how to name, and even fewer know how to use consciously. You are in this moment right now, still caught in this question, still carrying this weight on your chest, a feeling that won't go away, a connection that can't be explained, a recognition that doesn't follow any logic but also doesn't disappear. And this is exactly the right moment to act, not when the doubt has already passed, but now, while it's still active, because now is when the answer will change something within you. The link is in the first pinned comment. But be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. And before we continue, leave a comment. Is there someone in your life that you just can't quite place, even after trying? You don't have to say who it is. Just say if they exist. Because what I want to show you now goes beyond the question of whether or not this person is your destiny. What matters first is understanding how Scorpio gets to this point, how a person enters in a way that they never leave. Not everyone can achieve this, and Scorpio doesn't allow just anyone to go deep enough to create that kind of record. Most people who pass through Scorpio's life stay on the surface. They smile, talk, may even engage for a while. But there's a different level of access, a level that Scorpio rarely grants, sometimes without even realizing they're granting it. It's almost involuntary, like a door that opens before you decide if you want to open it. And when that happens, when someone reaches that level, something changes. It's not a decision, it's a change of state. Like when you dive and the water pressure changes around your body, you didn't choose to feel it, but you are feeling it. There's no undoing it. There's no pretending it didn't happen. Scorpio knows this better than any other sign of the zodiac. Scorpio registers this person, not as a common affective memory, but as a frequency, as if Scorpio's internal system had captured something that still needs to be understood, and while understanding doesn't arrive, the record remains active, functioning, processing in the background like a program you haven't closed. You don't even remember it's open, but it keeps running. And here begins the most troubling point. Scorpio can cut this person off. They can block, silence, build concrete walls around everything that has to do with them. Scorpio is perhaps the sign most capable of executing a clean surgical cut without visible hesitation. On the outside, it seems like it's over. On the inside, the record continues to transmit. It's like turning off a television. The signal doesn't stop because you turned off the set. It keeps coming. You simply chose not to receive it anymore. But the transmission exists independently of your decision to watch or not. And at some point, late at night, when the mind is too quiet and the defenses are down, you feel that signal again. Not necessarily as longing, as a frequency that your system still recognizes. And this creates an internal confusion that Scorpio rarely admits. If I cut it off, why do I still feel it? If I decided to move on, why does this person still occupy space? The answer the world offers is too simple. You haven't gotten over it yet. You still love them. You need more time. But Scorpio knows that's not the case. Scorpio can distinguish when something has truly passed and when something has simply been put on hold. And there are people who remain on hold for years without anything changing that condition. Without any argument, any new relationship, any reasonable logic managing to close that file. So is the cut real or is it protection? Both. And that's the first truth Scorpio needs to honor. Cutting is not the same as resolving. It's a valid and necessary measure of emotional survival. But it doesn't erase the record. It never has. And this inability to erase what has been genuinely recorded is exactly what the digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, addresses from an angle I had never seen before. It talks about how Scorpio carries frequencies from people and situations in a way that other signs simply don't, and how to transform that into self-knowledge instead of burden. It's not about erasing, it's about understanding what the record is trying to tell you. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. So what differentiates the people who are registered from those who are not? Scorpio doesn't register feelings based on intensity. They may have felt very strong emotions for people who passed through their lives without leaving a deep mark. The record isn't proportional to the emotion felt at the moment. It's proportional to something Scorpio perceives, consciously or unconsciously, about what that connection represents within a larger cycle. It's an interpretation that happens below the conscious level, before reason has time to intervene. Think of it this way. There are books you've read and enjoyed. They're in the past. There are books that changed how you read everything else afterward. Not necessarily because they were better written, but because something about them reorganized your internal structure. After them, you never read the same way again. The world became slightly different. You became slightly different. Scorpio has people like that. They aren't necessarily the most beautiful, the most intelligent, or the most compatible on paper. They are the ones who rearranged something, the ones who arrived and upon arriving touched something that was waiting to be touched, a layer of Scorpio that he himself didn't know how to name until that encounter. A part that was quiet, dormant, perhaps even forgotten. And when that part was touched, it awakened. And once awakened, it never returns to silence. And now comes the paradox that no one from the outside can solve. If this person reorganized something within you, do they still have a role in your life? Or was their role already fulfilled the moment the reorganization occurred? Scorpio is caught between two possibilities. The first, this person still belongs in their life, and what you feel is a sign that something needs to be completed. The second, their role has already been fulfilled, and what you feel is the difficulty in accepting that real transformations leave permanent marks. And this doesn't mean that the person who caused the transformation needs to remain present. And here's the most unsettling part of all. Scorpio feels both things at the same time. You feel that the person belongs, and you feel that the person is gone, and you don't know which feeling to trust. Which one is perception, and which one is desire disguised as perception? The world calls this obsession. Scorpio knows it isn't, because obsession is irrational, repetitive, circular. You think, you suffer, you think again, you suffer again without any internal movement. What Scorpio feels is different. It's like the feeling that a mathematical problem has been almost solved. You see where the solution is. You feel you're one step away, but you can't quite complete the reasoning. It's not madness, it's incomplete perception. And the difference between the two is everything, because obsession keeps you in place. Incomplete perception, when recognized as such, moves you. It forces you to keep searching for what has not yet been understood. This distinction between obsession and perception, this territory where Scorpio lives and which few manage to understand, is explored with surprising depth in the digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. Specifically, it explores how Scorpio processes connections on multiple layers simultaneously, and how to transform this capacity for deep reading into clarity instead of confusion. It's the kind of content that makes you think, someone finally understood how I function. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. But it comes at a cost, and Scorpio knows that cost better than any other sign. Carrying someone inside you without resolution drains you in a subtle way. It's not an acute pain that you can locate and treat. It's a low-intensity weight that lingers, that occupies space, that appears in the most unexpected moments. In a song, in a smell, in a situation similar to something you experienced together, not necessarily as nostalgia. Sometimes just as the awareness that that memory is still active, still processing, still waiting for some resolution that never came. And Scorpio carries this burden because letting go feels wrong. Not because they are weak, but because Scorpio has an instinctive loyalty to what they recognize as true. If that connection was genuine and Scorpio only registers what was true, then discarding it feels like a betrayal of something that deserved more than to be thrown away, like discarding proof of something that actually happened, like pretending it didn't happen. It's a stone you won't let go of, not because it's light, but because it seems too important, because somewhere inside you there's a certainty that this stone has meaning, that it's not just weight, it's also part of a story that hasn't yet been fully understood. And while that story hasn't been understood, letting it go seems premature. It seems like giving up too soon. But there's a critical point in this process that Scorpio often ignores. The weight of carrying isn't neutral. It occupies space that could be used for something else. It consumes energy that could be directed toward what is present, toward what is alive, toward what still has a future. And Scorpio, with all its capacity to go deep, to sustain intensity for long periods, sometimes doesn't realize how much of that energy is being spent maintaining a record that has stopped moving forward. But there is a moment. Scorpio knows this moment too, even if it rarely arrives. It's the moment when you stop carrying the stone because you think you need to, and start consciously deciding what to do with it, not necessarily throwing it away. Understanding what it represents, understanding what that person, that record, that frequency that doesn't pass, what all of this is telling you about yourself. Because in the end, Scorpio's deepest records are rarely just about the other person. They're about what Scorpio discovered about themselves in that connection. They're about the version of Scorpio that emerged when that person was present, a version that Scorpio may not have encountered in any other context. And what remains isn't the person, it's that version. It's who you were able to be in that encounter. And recognizing that changes everything. This movement of unconsciously carrying the weight without choosing what to do with it is exactly the kind of transformation that the digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, accurately maps for Scorpio. Not as generic self-help, as a real understanding of how this sign processes loss, continuity, and recognition, and how to use this depth to build something instead of just carrying it. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. So we return to the original question. Is this person still your destiny? Scorpio doesn't work with destiny as a passive concept, as something that will happen to you if you wait long enough. For Scorpio, destiny is recognition. It's what you already know at the deepest level belongs to your cycle. Not because someone told you, not because it makes logical sense, but because something within you identified a real resonance and decided, without asking reason for permission, that this resonance matters. And the question isn't whether that person will come back, whether circumstances will change, or whether something external will rearrange itself in a way that makes everything fit together again. The question is, what is this recognition telling you about who you are now? About what you need to understand, integrate, and transform within yourself? Because Scorpio wasn't made to hold on to people. It was made to recognize truths. And sometimes the truth a person carries for you is about you, not about them. About a part of yourself that needed to be seen, named, transformed. And once that transformation happens, the record doesn't disappear, but it changes in nature. It ceases to be a burden and becomes part of your inner architecture, part of what makes you capable of feeling with the depth that you feel, part of who you have become. This person may or may not return. They may or may not play an active role in what comes next. Scorpio doesn't need this answer to move on. They don't need external certainty to honor what they feel internally. They only need to acknowledge that what was true was, that what was recorded was worthwhile, that the capacity to feel with this depth, to recognize instead of simply reacting, to perceive instead of just reacting, is the greatest power that Scorpio carries within themselves. Other signs forget. Scorpio transforms, and there's a huge difference between the two. Forgetting is erasing. Transforming is integrating. It's taking what was and making it part of who you are. That's what Scorpio does instinctively, even when they don't know they're doing it. A compass doesn't force you to go north. It simply never lies about where north is. And Scorpio, with all its depth, with all the weight it chooses to carry, with all the insight the world hasn't yet learned to name properly, Scorpio has always known where north was, even when he pretended not to. And this knowledge, silent and unwavering, is precisely what makes Scorpio who he is.